Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn Tesis Divra Amaschel, Da'amrinon Kluta Kamisha Hun Chadamya. Let's begin by looking at the flowchart of the Gemara so we can see what Tesis is coming to explain. So before we actually look at this question, give the background information of the Gemara because it's needed in order to understand the Tesis. Our Gemara began with the question, Amai Chayev v'habe'inan akir v'anocha me'al gavi mokin dalad al dalad. Why in our Mishnah are the ani and balabayas chayiv, but we need an area that's 4x4 for the akira to be made from, and for the anacha to be made to. And in all the cases of our Mishnah, this is missing, because in each and every case, either the haitzar achnasa is done into the hand of the other person, or it's done from the hand of the other person, and the hand of a person is less than 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. The Gemara then presented the answer of Rava, who said, Hamani Rabbi Akiva. Who does this follow? Who's the author of our Mishnah? It's Rabbi Akiva. That does not make it necessary to have Kira Anocha from and to an area that's 4x4 tefachim. Where do we see that Rabbi Akiva says this? So we presented a machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan. In a case where an individual throws an item from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah over Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Akiva says that he's chayev, and the Rabbanan say that he's pater. And we explained that Rabbi Akiva holds kluta kamishon chadami when an item is contained in the ear of a rishus, and therefore we say it was contained in the ear of the rishus rabbim. Kamishon chadami, as if it's resting at that in that rishus, and therefore the person is chayav for the malacha veitzah he carried from rishus yachid to rishus rabbim. The Gemara then went on to ask lememra, and that's what Tosfos is going to focus on. This question of the Gemara. Lememra the pshitale l'Rabba. Are you telling me that it was clear to Rabba that the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon was about kluta? Well, we actually find that Rabbah had a question about what they're arguing about. That's what Tosfos is going to focus on. Let's begin with the general outline, and then we'll go to the Tosfos itself. So the Gemara asked, how can Rabbah say that Rabbi Akiva holds of Kluta if he had a doubt what they're arguing about? How can we say that it was clear to Rabbah and they're arguing about Kluta when he actually had a question about what they're arguing about? So we're going to divide Tosfos into two parts, but it's really one thing. First, Tosfos will ask on the Gemara's question. The Gemara asks, are you telling me it was clear to Rabbah? But we know Rabbah had a question. What indicates that it was clear to Rabbah? And Tosfos will explain that it doesn't seem that there's any indication that it was clear to him, as we'll see in the Tosfos itself. And then Tosfos will give two answers to this question, and the second answer will have an extended side discussion. So let's see Tosfos now in the flowchart form. So the Gemara asked the question, was it clear to Rabbah? The Rabbi Akiva says, was it clear to him that that's what they're arguing about, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? But we know that it was unclear to Rabbah what they're arguing about, and it was unclear to him what's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So re-asks a question, why are we saying that these two things are mutually exclusive? Why does it have to be that if Rabbah said it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that indicates that it was clear to him what they're arguing about? Why can't we say, Rabbah says it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, even though he was unsure what they're arguing about? Why does it have to be one or the other? The Gemara's question, let's explain that one more time, a little differently. The Gemara's question is, all Rabbah said was, it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that doesn't make it necessary to have Dalad al Dalad. The Gemara seems to imply that indicates that it was clear to Rabbah what they're arguing about. And Tosfos is asking, why does that indicate that it's clear to Rabbah what they're arguing about? It's possible that he was unclear, and he could still say that, and Tosfos will show how in a moment. So basically, we'll just show the 2 points that are coming up. Rabbah said Rabbi Akiva holds kluta kamisha l'chadamya, and at the same time he said, I'm uncertain what they're arguing about. And the Gemara says these two statements are mutually exclusive. It can be both of them. And Tosfos is asking, why not? Why can these two statements work together? It seems that they could. And now Tosfos is going to present possible answers somebody would give, and he's going to show how they're not answers. And therefore he has this question, where do we see it's obvious to him what they're arguing about? That therefore we ask, was it obvious to him? So Tosfos will say what somebody might want to answer. It's an arrow because his question is, where do we see it's clear? And then he's going to address possible answers someone might give. If it's because he said it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, look, he said Rabbi Akiva holds kluta. Now, Rabbah was uncertain, does Rabbi Akiva hold kluta? Or maybe Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan hold kluta. Says Tosfos, the reason he would have said that Rabbi Akiva holds kluta because Rabbi Akiva for sure holds kluta. Rabbah was uncertain. Are they arguing about kluta and Rabbi Akiva holds of kluta and the Rabbanan don't? Or they're arguing whether Yalfinon Zerek Mimashitz. And we said, but in that case, that way of looking at it, they both hold of kluta. So either way, Rabbi Akiva holds of kluta. So why can't we just say that Rabbah was uncertain what they're arguing about? And the reason he said it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva is because it's for sure the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So it could be that he did have a doubt, and he mentioned it's Rabbi Akiva because it's certainly the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Then Tosfos says, and if we were to say, because the Gemara says, Hamani Rabbi Akiva, and then the Gemara presents the machlekes between Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanon, with the two Rishus HaYachids and the Rishus HaRabim in between. And the Gemara explains, Rabbi Kiva says chayiv because he holds of kluta, and the Rabbanon say pater because they don't hold of kluta. If we were to say that all of those words are the words of Rabbah, then we have the answer to our question. Look, Rabbah says that they're arguing about kluta, but we have a question. We know that Rabbah was uncertain what they're arguing about. But Tosfos says it doesn't seem that those are the words of Rabbah. That seems to be the words of the Gemara bringing down where the machlekes is found and how we're going to interpret it in order that it should fit with Rabbi Akiva. It seems that the only words of Rabbah were Ha'mani Rabbi Akiva. Who does this follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? And that being the case, how can we understand the Gemara's question? Was it clear to Rabbah that they're arguing about Kluta? But we know he had a question. Where is there an indication that it was clear to Rabbah by Rabbah saying it's Rabbi Akiva? All he's coming to tell us is it for sure fits with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, regardless of how we learn the machlekes. So that's Tosfos' question. That's the whole question. And now we're going to move on to the two answers. So the first answer is provided by the Ri as well as the second. Let's see the first answer. The first answer is Rabbah said, I'm unsure how to understand the machlekes. So if he says he's unsure to understand the machlekes, that means any possible way of understanding the machlekes, as long as it's logical, he's unsure if that's one of the ways of understanding it. And therefore, there are other ways of understanding it. In other words, Tosfos will explain this in a moment. In other words, Rabbah had a question how to understand the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon. That indicates that any way of understanding it that makes sense is acceptable. Rabbah just said, I'll give you two examples, two possible ways of learning it, but there might be others as well. The Rabbah is unsure if they're correct, so he only gave two as an example. But the truth of the matter is there are other ways of understanding the machlekes, and they're also valid. And then one of them is, so it's also possible, says Tosfos, that they actually both don't hold of kluta. And therefore, if a person threw an item from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid on two sides of Rishus HaRabim, across the street from one another, under 10 tvachim, above 10 tvachim, everybody agrees it's pater because nobody holds of kluta, not Rabbi Akiva and not the Rabbanon. And they're arguing when it was thrown from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid on the same side of the street. We're there. We know that the din is that there's a chiyuv from Meishit, and they argue Yalfinan Zerek mi Meishit or not. Rabbi Akiva says we learn Zerek from Meishit. Therefore, just like Meishit is chayiv in this manner, so is Zerek. The Rabbanan say Lo Yalfinan Zerek mi Meishit. Meishit is chayiv because that's what's done in the Mishkan. Zerek is not. And that's what we explain. And they're arguing when they're on the same side of the street. On two sides of the street, they agree that it's pater because nobody holds of kluta. And on the same side of the street, they're arguing. Rabbi Akiva says we learn zerek from Meishit, and therefore it's chayiv. The Rabbanan say we don't learn zerek from Meishit, and therefore it's pater. Now, why didn't Rabbah present this as one of the possibilities? So says Tosfos, he just didn't trouble himself to explain all of them. He was basically telling us there are many. I'm unsure how to understand the machlekes. And he presented two possible ways, but there are others as well. And therefore, now we can understand the question of the Gemara. Let's go back and see how this answers the question. By Rabbah saying it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that says Kluta contradicts what we know that he said that I'm unsure how to interpret the machlekes. Because if he's unsure how to interpret the machlekes, then there is out there an interpretation that will come out that Rabbi Akiva does not hold of Kluta. So him saying it's Rabbi Akiva who holds of Kluta contradicts what he told us elsewhere that I'm unsure how to interpret the machlekes. And that's why the Gemara continues on to conclude that originally he had a question how to interpret the machlekes, but then he apparently and obviously resolved it, as we see that he tells us it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now let's move on to the second answer of Tosfos. The second answer of Tosfos tells us that actually if we just look at the information in the Gemara, we already have an answer to this question. We don't have to say there are other ways. Actually, within the ways mentioned in the Gemara, it's already clear that Rabbi Akiva doesn't necessarily hold of Kluta. How is that? In the second way of understanding the machlekes, we said that they're arguing when it was thrown, when the object was thrown from one Rishus HaYachid to another over Rishus HaRabim, when it was above 10 tvachim. Rabbi Akiva says chayiv because he learns Zerek from Meishit, and the Rabbanan say pater because they don't learn Zerek from Meishit. However, below 10 tvachim, everybody agrees that it's chayiv. Why? Because Yalfinan Zerek mi Meishit. The simple way we learned it is everybody holds chayiv because everybody holds Kluta Kamisha Hun Chadamya. So the simple way of learning it is that why does everybody hold chayiv? For the same reason, because Kluta Kamisha Hun Chadamya. Since it's lower than 10 tvachim, that means when the object went through the Rishus HaRabim, it's still within the confines of the Rishus HaRabim, because Rishus HaRabim extends up to 10 tvachim. So if we say Kluta Kamisha Hun, as if it rested in the Rishus HaRabim, person did the malacha of itself. Says Tosfos that's incorrect. The reason, according to this answer, when the Gemara says below 10 tvachim, everybody agrees that it's chayiv because of Kluta, it means to say everybody holds it's chayiv. Kluta is the explanation for the Rabbanon. Why does Rabbi Akiva say chayiv? Rabbi Akiva does not hold of Kluta. Rabbi Akiva says chayiv because we learn Zerek from Meishit. and Moshe is chayiv above 10 tefachim and within 10 tefachim. Like we had an earlier discussion about that. So according to this answer, it comes out that Rabba telling us that it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and in a moment, Tosfos will explain why he's saying this, and in a way try to prove it logically. But first, we'll relate it to the question. So, the Rabba telling us that this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva holds Kluta contradicts him telling us elsewhere that I'm uncertain how to interpret the machlekes, and according to one of the ways, Rabbi Akiva says chayev above 10 tefachim because of Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet, and below 10 tefachim because Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet, and he does not hold of Kluta, and he cannot hold of Kluta like Tosfos will show us in a moment, and therefore they're mutually exclusive. They contradict one another. How can you say you hold that Rabbi Akiva holds Kluta Kamisha Chadamia when you said you're uncertain what they're arguing about, and in one of the interpretations, Rabbi Akiva does not hold of Kluta Kamisha Chadamia. Now let's see the next part of Tosfos where he completes this answer and in a way attempts to prove it logically. If he holds of Kluta, then he can't learn Zerek from Moshe. Tosfos basically says if Rabbi Akiva holds above 10 Tvachim, they're chayiv. A person is chayiv because Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet, that's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, then Rabbi Akiva cannot hold of Kluta because Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet and Kluta are mutually exclusive. They're not compatible. One contradicts the other. How is it? So Tosfos will explain to us. If we're going to say Kluta Kamisha Hunchadamia, that means when an item goes through a Rishus, it's as if it's resting in that Rishus, then you can never learn Zerek from Moshe because Zerek and Moshe are very different. Because let's look at Zerek let's look at Moshe and then Zerek. Moshe is from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid through the Rishus HaRabim. Zerek would be from Rishus HaYachid, then it stopped in the Makom P'tor, and then it went from the Makom P'tor to the Rishus HaYachid. So they're not similar at all. How could we learn Zerek from Moshe? Let's see it inside. Since by Zerek, the object goes from one Rishus HaYachid to a Makom P'tor, and then to a Rishus HaYachid. But by Moshe, it goes straight from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid, and Rishus HaRabim is just in the middle. So therefore it comes out that if one holds of Kluta, one cannot hold Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet. If one holds Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet, they do not hold of Kluta. Because Kluta changes the dynamic of the act. It changes it from going from one Rishus to another. Just passing through another Rishus, it makes it that it stopped in that middle Rishus, which then makes it different from Moshe. So if we say we learn Zerek from Moshe, we're saying that it never stopped in the middle Rishus. That means we don't hold of Kluta. If we do hold of Kluta, then it did stop in the middle Rishus, then you can't learn Zerek from Moshe, because Zerek is different from Moshe. And Tosfos there concludes, and now it makes sense where he asks, is it clear to Rabba? Because by Rabba telling us that Rabbi Akiva holds of Kluta contradicts the fact that he said he's uncertain, and in the second way of interpreting the machlekes, Rabbi Akiva does not and cannot hold of Kluta. Therefore, the Gemara asks, was it clear to him that he holds of Kluta? But we know he had a question, and in one of the ways, he does not hold of Kluta. Now we're going to move to a side discussion for a moment related to a previous Tosfos. So we'll do that get to the side, get off topic just for a moment, and then we'll come back to the main discussion. Tosfos says, now it also makes sense, a question that we asked earlier on. Earlier on, we asked, why do we say that if they're arguing within 10 Tvachim, Rabbi Akiva holds of Kluta, and the Rabbanan don't? We said, but above 10 Tvachim, everybody says it's pater because we don't learn Zerek from Moshe. We asked, why don't we say, but above 10 Tvachim, everybody says Chayiv, because we do learn Zerek from Moshe. Why do we say that they don't learn Zerek from Moshe? But now it makes sense, because if Rabbi Akiva holds of Kluta, he cannot learn Zerek from Moshe. We just explained that they're mutually exclusive. So if we were to say that they're arguing within 10 Tvachim, Rabbi Akiva holds of Kluta, and the Rabbanan don't hold of Kluta, and then we want to conclude and say, but above 10 Tvachim, everybody agrees, we must say everybody agrees that it's pater, and we do not learn Zerek from Moshe. Because since there's an opinion, which is Rabbi Akiva, that it holds of Kluta, we cannot anymore say that he holds of Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshet, like we just explained, that they're mutually exclusive. Now Tosfos moves on and says that it seems that there's actually a proof for this interpretation, that Rabbi Akiva does not hold of Kluta, according to the second way of learning the argument. It seems that there's a proof from the Gemara itself, not just logic-based. It says it also seems true. Why? Because Rav Chisda had the same question as Rabbi. Rav Chisda also said, I'm unsure what they're arguing about, and he explained the possibilities the same way it's presented in our Gemara. Now, if we were to say that Kluta is everybody's opinion, according to the second way, that above 10 Tvachim they're arguing about Zerek from Moshe, but within 10 Tvachim everybody agrees that it's Chayiv because of Kluta, and we say that Kluta applies to both Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan. If we were to say that, that's a problem. The reason is, Rav Chisda is of the opinion later on that in a Rishus HaYachid it's not necessary to have a Hanacha on an area that's 4x4. However, in Rishus HaRabim it is necessary to have a Hanacha on an area that's 4x4. Now, if everybody holds of Kluta, Kluta means that it's not necessary to have a Hanacha on an area that's 4x4. It's just contained in the ear. There's no Hanacha. It's not necessary to have on an area that's 4x4. So how could Rav Chisda attribute to both Tanaim, Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan, that they both hold Kluta Kamisha Hunchadamya, which means that it's not necessary to have hanocha on an area that's 4x4 anywhere. And then he himself goes on to say, only in Rosh Hashanah it's not necessary to have hanocha on an area that's 4x4, but in Rosh Hashanah it is necessary. Who is he relying on with that opinion? If he's saying that Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan both don't hold of it, so it must be that in either way of interpreting the machlekes, he leaves an opinion that does not hold of kluta. In the first one, only Rabbi Kiva holds of kluta. The Rabbanan argue and say pater because they don't hold of kluta. And in the second way of learning the machlekes, they argue about Delfin and Zerg Meishit, and within 10 Tfachim, they both hold chayiv, but Rabbi Kiva doesn't hold it because of kluta. The Rabbanan hold it because of kluta. So in the first way, Rabbi Kiva holds of kluta, the Rabbanan don't, so he leaves himself somebody to rely on. And in the second way, the Rabbanan hold of kluta, Rabbi Kiva doesn't. Once again, he leaves himself somebody to rely on. So that's how we have a proof. However, Tosfos qualifies this proof and says, this is all going to be in a later Tosfos as well. However, the Rashba says that Rav Chizda holds it's not necessary to have hanocha on an area that's 4x4 in Rosh Hashanah and the Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, he doesn't have to leave himself anybody to rely on. He holds it's never needed to have hanocha on an area that's 4x4. So it's not a problem for him to say everybody holds of kluta. Everybody holds you don't need 4x4. He also holds the same both in Rosh Hashanah and the Rosh Hashanah. With that, we finish the Tosfos. So let's summarize the Tosfos. Tosfos asked the question: why does the Gemara ask? Was it clear to Rabbah that they're arguing about kluta? When we know that he had a question what they argue about. So Tosfos asks, why can't we say that those two things work together? They're not a contradiction. Why do they have to be mutually exclusive? Rabbah said that it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and he had a question how to learn the machlekes. But he could still say it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, since regardless of how we learn the machlekes, Rabbi Akiva certainly holds of kluta. Tosfos gives two answers. The first answer was that since Rabbah said he's unclear of how to learn the machlekes, he didn't mean to say there's only two ways of learning it. He meant to say, I'm unclear how to learn the machlekes. There are many ways, and he mentioned two of them just as examples. And therefore it comes out that there's another way of learning the machlekes within which Rabbi Akiva does not hold of kluta. And therefore it is a contradiction for Rabbah to say it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva who holds of kluta, and also to say, I'm unsure how to learn the machlekes, and one of the ways Rabbi Akiva will not hold of kluta. The second answer in Tosfos is that actually, from among the two ways that Rabbah presents to learn the machlekes, in one of them, Rabbi Akiva does not hold of kluta. And therefore, it is a contradiction for Rabbah to say Rabbi Akiva holds kluta, and then say I'm unsure how they learn the machlekes, and present the way where Rabbi Akiva does not hold of kluta. And that is in the second way, that they're arguing above 10 Tfachim, whether Yalfin and Zerk Meishit, and within 10 Tfachim, everybody agrees chayev because of kluta. That's only the Rabbanan. Then we say because of kluta, that only is attributed to the Rabbanon, that because of kluta. Rabbi Akiva holds chayev for a different reason, because we learn Zerek from Meishit, and he does not hold of kluta. And therefore they are mutually exclusive to say Rabbi Akiva holds kluta, and then say there's a way of learning the machlekes that Rabbi Akiva does not hold of kluta. Tosfos then went on to bring two proofs to this. One logic-based, to show that learning Zerek from Meishit is not compatible with kluta. So if Rabbi Akiva holds Yalfin and Zerek from Meishit, he cannot hold of kluta. And then a second proof, based on a later Gemara from Rav Chisda, which he qualified and said is not a proof according to the Rashba. Another thing that we did in Tosfos is we resolved an earlier difficulty. Why is it that when we explain that they're arguing within 10 Tvachim, whether we say Klut or not, we conclude and say, but above 10 Tvachim, everybody agrees that it's Potter because we don't learn Zarek from Meishit. Why don't we say everybody agrees that it's Chayiv because we do learn Zarek from Meishit? That has now been resolved, because once we say that within 10 Tvachim, there's an opinion that holds of Kluta, we cannot anymore say that everybody agrees we learn Zarek from Meishit, since Kluta and Zarek from Meishit are not compatible. They're mutually exclusive. If one holds of Kluta, they cannot hold Yalfin and Zarek from Meishit. And therefore, once we presented that the Machlekes is about Kluta, one opinion holds of it, Rabbi Kiva, and one opinion doesn't, which is the Rabbanon, we can't anymore say everybody agrees above 10 Tfachim that it's Chayiv because they learn Zarek from Meishit. And therefore, we have to say everybody agrees that it's Potter because we do not learn Zarek from Meishit.